d'être ici aujourd'hui, mais je veux juste faire dire à la debout que malheureusement, on ne va pas sa présentation en français parce que comme tu peux attendre maintenant, c'est pas mon premier langue. Non, vraiment, on fait une présentation, c'est un peu académique. Et pour ces idées-là, on vraiment pensé que c'était mieux qu'on fait ça dans notre première langue pour exprimer notre ideas un peu mieux. Je suis vraiment désolée s'il y a des personnes dans le public qui ne comprennent pas l'anglais. But from now on, this presentation will be in English. Thank you for coming. This is a talk, a sort of nerdy, geeky talk on drag kings and alternative drag. Is there anyone here who feels like they're already a fan of drag kings or alternative drag?
Love to hear it.
That's a good number of cheers. So who are we and why are we doing this talk?
Alrighty, here we go. So hi everybody, my name is Kajol. I've been doing drag since 2017 and started my drag journey in Berlin, Germany at Pride. In my day drag, I'm a musical theater performer and director, dramaturg. I've worked at many companies like the Segal Center, the Centaur, the Mai, and Imago Theater. And my drag is very much centered around community and sustainability with a large dose of camp. Some days I'm ultra femme presenting, others I'm a sewing machine, a button, and today I'm a human heart. My drag always tells a story. Tell us about you, Herc.
Hello, I am Hercule Lees. I am most well known for having appeared on season 1 of Call Me Mother on Out TV. I've been doing drag for about 5 years, but I've been a professional artist for 15 years, so I did a lot of things that helped me get to where I am in my drag journey before I actually started drag. I have been asked to give this presentation because I'm the producer, creator, and host of a drag cabaret in Montreal called Mythos. Thank you, some people have been. And Mythos, one of the things that we do is that we have gender-balanced casting. So that means that we want to represent people in our community, whether they were assigned female at birth, male at birth, identify as non-binary, as cisgender, as trans, whatever. We want everyone to be equally represented at our shows. So we were asked to kind of give our perspective and insight on this subject here today. So let's start with a mini history lesson.
Absolutely, let's begin. So people have been cross-dressing as far back as archaeologists and historians can tell. Subverting gender norms as a form of self-expression or entertainment isn't new. You may be familiar with historical female impersonators, so here's a few examples of male impersonators from the 19th century.
Saucy.
Here we go. Gawango Mohawk was an indigenous Seneca playwright and actor known for her roles as a male impersonator. She toured her shows across the US and Europe. Though her stage career, she became an advocate and activist for Native American rights.
Next up, we have Ethel Waters, who is a famous American blues singer from Harlem who made a huge radio career and also made it big as an actress in Hollywood. She was secretly but kind of famously known for being a lesbian. She lived with her lesbian partner, but of course in her day and age she actually wasn't out as being a homosexual, and she often cross-dressed in her singing acts.
Ella Westner was a celebrated male impersonator of the Gilded Age vaudeville circuit, performing at the Gaiety Theatre in English and Yiddish shows. When she died, she requested to be buried in a menswear suit.
So, drag, alternative drag, what is it? We need to define some things before we get deep into this subject. So up until very recently, all drag was considered alternative to mainstream culture. And of course there have been examples of times when people cross-dressed very publicly. Robin Williams and Mrs. Doubtfire, a favorite of mine. Do you want to show us Robin Williams? There's a slide for this, as if you can't remember. But I don't consider that drag. It's not coming from within the queer community. So drag that has operated for the purposes of self-expression for queer people. For decades, that was really just happening in venues where people felt or safe. So they were underground, maybe not obviously publicly listed, that kind of thing. And something that I think is really important to remind people or to tell people is that it wasn't just queens in these spaces. There were just as many kings depending on the city, the scene, the time period, that sort of thing. Kings have always been there.
In the 21st century, we've really seen a rise in the acceptance of gender. There we go. In the 21st century, we've really seen a rise in the acceptance of gender nonconformity and more people identifying as non-binary. The breakdown of the binaries has influenced drag by creating a lot more room and acceptance for gender fluidity within drag. And drag titles aren't gender specific, like drag monster, drag alien, drag clown, or simply drag artist. This is a rising trend as many people feel it liberating not to have to follow prescriptive gender norms, even when cross-dressing.
So here are a few people you have probably heard of, because you've seen them on your TVs, who are well-known big figures who identify as non-binary. First up, we have Cheddar Gorgeous. So Cheddar was a runner-up on season 4 of UK's Drag Race, and even long before she appeared on that TV, in the queer community, she was already legendary for doing gender-bending looks and really pushing what it meant to be a queen.
Toddy, I'm sure many of you have heard of Toddy. Toddy was the winner of season 1 of Call Me Mother and identifies as a drag clown. Their drag is often a blend of feminine and masculine features.
Next we have Dali, who was the winner of season 4 of Dragula. Their drag often presents very masculine, though they're very adamant about their identity, they are non-binary, and everything has this extra beautiful coating of horror on top of it.
Throb Zombie is in the cast of the upcoming season 5 of Dragula and has 2 personas, one very mask and one very femme.
Right, so those are some examples of stuff you don't see all the time, but it's out there, it's percolating, it's starting to get popular, right? So, what is considered alternative drag today? So if all drag used to be alternative, now we're literally in a convention center for drag. So it's hard to argue that we're that alternative now. We're officially mainstream. Now, the people, though, that have kind of decided what is alternative and what not is one entity. You can probably guess it, because I bet you're all a fan. It's RuPaul's Drag Race. So ultimately, casting directors on that show have had a really big influence by saying, we're putting these types of people on TV, and therefore, you probably want to, for show producers and venues, book people like that for your shows. So it's creating more and more opportunities for the types of people that are already seen on television. Let me find myself in here. So yeah, so that's a safer business model for producers to go with, right? This is a big generalization because of course there's exceptions to this, but the kind of artists we can call alternative that we don't see as much of on TV are people who are cis women like myself, trans men, non-binary people who are assigned female at birth, as other people who also might be, say, prohibited from partaking in reality TV, people with physical disabilities, neurotypical differences, even just people who are lower income because the bar of entry of doing a show like that is so expensive. And then other people you might not expect are, say, like asexual people who don't feel comfortable in venues where there's a presumed sexual consent around eroticized contents, like there is in a lot of gay spaces, or people who are, say, sober and they don't feel comfortable at shows where we're pushing alcohol sales really hard. So that's a lot of kinds of people I've just mentioned, and we can all kind of safely, by definition, fit them under the bracket of alternative in this case.
So the success of RuPaul's Drag Race is a testament to the talent and power of queer entertainers. And
just in case you needed to see the picture of RuPaul.
Here we go, just in case you didn't know who she was. And while it's headed for season 16, with a plethora of spin-offs and international franchises, it started as a small production in 2009. RuPaul is a glamazon queen and so has made a competition primarily centered around her style of drag. 14 years after the first episode aired, we can see now an imbalance that's developed from giving exposure to only one half of the community.
The new increased interest in drag queens over the last decade has resulted in more bookings, more money, more educational resources, and a stronger sense of community amongst queens. And now there's definitely been a trickle-down effect that has affected drag kings. We've grown at a much slower rate in comparison. And that's just sort of created a disparity where the gap kind of gets wider and wider and wider. So while in comparison, because we've grown so slow, it kind of makes kings look like we could be unpolished or lazy or unimaginative, but it's really because we haven't had the same opportunities to gain experience from performing live, or because we haven't been making the money to justify reinvesting into costumes in our drags. So there's sort of a systemic barrier that's been keeping people back. But I think the biggest impact that Drag Race has actually had on the queen community is the fact that they have created so many amazing role models for other queens. So if you're aspiring to be a drag queen, you can look and see so many different kinds of drag presented there, and yet it is still mostly limited to feminine representation. So if you're a drag king and you're trying to get inspiration, well, we had to wait a really long time to see a drag king on TV. And that person finally was Landon Sider, who appeared on season 3 of Dragula and won the show. And it's amazing that he did that, but then it put a lot of pressure on him to be like the one king representing them all in comparison to queens who can be so many kinds of things. So the lack of role models has meant for fewer examples to serve as inspiration for kings, but it's also told the public that this form is not kind of as valid, or it's kind of in question, or it's in development. And so that makes it harder when you walk up as a drag king on stage to try to take up space, when you can feel that the whole audience is like, what am I looking at? It just makes it a little bit trickier each time you perform. So Landon is not the only drag king out there. There are lots and lots and lots. So we're gonna do like a very quick overview of some kings that you can and should follow. There are so many good kings. You should hit me up later if you want like a list of 20, but we're just gonna go over 5 right now.
Here we go. Pepperoni is a Chicago-based king who in 2021, won the industry's most respected and non-televised competition, the Drag Queen of the Year pageant, created and produced by Alaska 5000.
Next up, we have Murray Hill. Murray started doing drag in 1996. He's a stand-up comic and he performs with incredible artists like Dita Von Teese, he tours with them. He also has a recurring role on HBO's show Somebody Somewhere, and right now he is the host of the Hulu show Drag Me, what is it called? Drag Me to Dinner. I haven't watched it. I will, I love Murray.
It's good fun. Here we go. Magic Dyke worked as a life coach, podcaster, and drag king while living in LA, where they recently moved to Nairobi, where they founded a collective called the King of Kings, the first drag collective of its kind over there.
Next up we have, and I'm sorry, I'm probably not pronouncing this correctly because I don't speak Spanish, Memo Reyri. Does anyone know how to say that better? Nope, okay, we're all on the same one. I don't even know, I know they are a Spanish speaker, but maybe the name is an imagined name. So they're a Mexican drag king, and they're best known for being on season 3 of La Mas Dragas, which up until recently people were calling sort of the Mexican Drag Race, but now there actually is a Drag Race Mexico, so I'm not sure what we're gonna call that show now. And he is interesting because he sort of represents this much bigger phenomenon in Latin America where people who were assigned male at birth, people who are cis men, do mask presenting drag. So he self-identifies as a bio king, and that's a pretty big movement down in South America.
And last and certainly not least on our list is River Glass. River Glass is a king and cosplayer known for making himbo looks out of popular characters. He's amassed nearly 1 million followers on TikTok for his makeup transformation videos.
So let's put those nerdy lenses back on after we show you some fun pictures and talk about how the patriarchy and capitalism impact drag.
Ooh, we're getting into the juicy bits. Here we go. So, Rue herself speaks about how she didn't have success as a drag queen until she traded in her punk aesthetic for the glamazon persona we know today. In order for her to achieve success, she conformed to the mainstream ideal of femininity. She was a tall black man in a dress, and she had the business sense to soften her image to widen her opportunities.
And I think a lot of the drag we see on TV can kind of be summed up by that example of Rue. Artists are often asked to soften or conform their image for the sake of being a more palatable product on television. We've heard in recent years stories about, say, trans artists being asked by production on Drag Race to not mention their transition or delay their physical transition because it would better serve the storylines. Personally, I think things like this are really damaging to individuals, and I don't think that we should be using those same principles to model our actual communities full of real human beings after.
I couldn't agree more. The fan base of Drag Race is essentially gender balanced. It's enjoyed by men, women, and non-binary people alike. However, the individuals profiting most from this industry are almost exclusively cis men. And when the power in decision-making belongs to just one demographic, it's inevitable that misogyny will become present.
Word. So I'll just speak a second from my own experience. I received quite a bit of hate mail following my appearance or during my appearance on Call Me Mother. And you know, when I told that to my grandma, she just assumed that it was like right-wing Christians who thought I was living a sinful life. But in reality, all the hate mail I received and still occasionally receive is from within the queer community. It's gay men who want to let me know that I don't deserve to take up space and that they feel the need to just throw a bunch of slurs at me. And while this stuff is disturbing, I think it's indicative of a much bigger problem that has sort of happened as a result of the gender imbalance casting on Drag Race, where the audience doesn't actually understand what real local drag scenes look like. So we need to do a much better job at retraining audiences so that we're putting artists first instead of profits first.
I love it. Go out and support your local drag. We have such a beautiful, vibrant community. Because many of the economic disadvantages to those performing alternative drag, the majority of all shows are produced on shoestring budgets in makeshift venues. And yet, without some of the restrictions of conforming to certain beauty ideals or gender binaries, the most interesting and innovative drag in the city is happening at these shows.
Hot take. So, how does embracing alternative drag actually improve and benefit the whole community, including this mainstream part?
Well, alternative drag makes room for individuality, creative self-expression, and risk-taking. It's inclusive of gender, orientation, body types, skin colors, cultural backgrounds, physical ability, and income levels. And Anglophones!
Look, je fais mon Duolingo pour comme 3 minutes chaque jour, okay? I'm working on it. Yeah, and so I believe, as a show producer, that it's my responsibility to retrain audiences who come in with an expectation to just see what they know from television and show them that many kinds of genders, people of all kinds of orientations partake in this art form. We all have equal space. And also, while I'm at it, it's nice to retrain people to have sort of a more reasonable expectation that, you know, we haven't all spent $50,000 on our wardrobes because it's harder for an average person to justify that expense.
As artists, I think we should feel less pressure to match the polished aesthetics and acts from TV, when in reality, this exists as a hobby for most people, and therefore should be fun and fulfilling as a hobby and not crippling to our bank accounts or our self-esteems.
Yes, that. So, as it is now, I think that this huge, beautiful, glorious, and glamorous community that we have dare I say this, could be even twice as glamorous if we created more opportunities to let more people in. Ooh, what a saucy thing to say. No, really, this community, Montreal in particular, has done so much and changed so much in just the 5 years that I've been performing. When I started out, there was almost no kings in the scene. I had never seen a drag king perform when I decided to start drag, because there were none in the city at the time. And now look at us here. There's actually a ton of kings present. The under construction booth, you should visit them. So we've done good, but we have more to go. I think that once we fully open the floodgates to alternative drag to join in this mainstream success, that we will just be richer with more perspectives and voices and be in a true period of innovation. Our community is more than what the casting directors on a TV show decided it is.
Absolutely. And lastly, by creating a more unified drag community, we make a stronger, more allied community. I can't believe I got that far and then so close yet so far. I'm going to try that again. Give me a second. And lastly, by creating a more unified drag community, we make a stronger, more allied community against actual threats to the LGBTQIA+ community and everything that they're facing at the moment. So this is no surprise, there's always been strength in community.
Absolutely. So, I'm sure you're all convinced. You're like, I've got to see some of these alt-drag shows Hercules has been pushing so hard. Where can you find them? Where can you see them? So Montreal has a handful of alternative venues, and let's see that next slide. So I've just listed a few shows and producers here down by venue name. Notre Dame de Quille has, NDQ is a lesbian bar in Little Italy, and a lot of really cool underground stuff is being produced there right now. Sometimes these are reoccurring shows, but a lot of times they're just like singular one-off shows, so it's good to follow these people and see what they're doing. I should also say this is not a full and complete list, and this list is growing and changing and fluctuating all the time depending on what folks are doing. Though I also forgot to leave Café Cléopâtre off this list, and I know that Les Biguines du Genre have a show there, I think, next week, so that's worth checking out. So go out there and see some weirdos that might be doing the cutting edge stuff that you're gonna see in 3 seasons from now on Drag Race.
Perfect. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Kajol.
And I'm Hercules. Enjoy the rest of your Rendezvous de la Drag.
Woo!